Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you for the kind invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I'm coming straight from the NEMO conference and from the ICOM Europe conferences in Lahti in Finland, so coming down from the far north to Budapest, but my way home to Vienna is not so far. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot today already. It was really great to listen to all these inspiring lectures. We see that technology is racing. And I, as coming from the museum, as a museum organization, I'm coming back to our central tasks and central topics. It's a central task to preserve, to make accessible, to convey the cultural products from the past. Digitalization of our museum collections has become a central part, contributing to fulfill those goals today. To document our objects in our collection, ICOM has developed, together with the Getty Foundations many years already ago, the Object ID standard. So this is the standard how internationally recognized we can document our objects, get records on them, and it's also obviously the standard for digitization, to describe our collections of archaeological objects, cultural objects, natural objects, and artistic objects. To preserve, make accessible, and convey cultural objects from the past, but also collecting contemporary art and objects, and to keep documenting our history and world heritage is important to us, but especially for the future generations. So our institutions contain cultural treasures that can and must be made accessible to an even wider audience with new technologies. So I'm presenting just an effort that is made in Austria to do just that. It's the Digital Cultural Heritage Strategy in Austria that has been is developed to show how can we better use existing tools and formulate objectives and recommendations for digitalization. This offensive is intended to ensure that cultural heritage is digitally secured and made accessible to the general public. This is to be done as part of the Austrian Recovery Plan in conjunction with a program for more sustainability in the museums, and another huge issue also connected to digitization, but on the other world facing the climate catastrophe that is ahead of us, and doing everything to make that from not happening, obviously. The Natural History Museum in Vienna serves as a coordination point for this project and is obviously an ideal platform. Just a short contribution of the main facts. The platform will bring together the cultural heritage of Austrian museums, Austrian institutions on one platform. The aim is to make cultural heritage freely accessible and to preserve it. Cultural Heritage is an innovation project that also supports the different institutions in their projects on digitization, and the portals enables participating institutions to present objects in the portal and network to a large audience they maybe could not reach by themselves. I mentioned that the project is hosted at the Natural History Museum of Vienna, and it's taken by the Federal Ministry of Arts and Culture and Public Service and Sport. It is developed and supported by the European Union Recovery and Resilience Fund. Steps forward that we're taking just now. Guidelines and recommendations can already be accessed on this platform. Those are based on the Europeana guidelines. The institutions will now start to digitize their collections. Some already have taken big steps doing that already. They will deliver and contribute those digital copies to the platform. The platform Kulturerbe Digital, that's the German name for it, collects all that data from the institutions, prepares it and feeds it into the platform. So the audience can be reached and can access all those data of the different museum collection objects on a web portal. So the benefit for institutions, obviously, is the standardization of metadata, the unification and structuring of this information about the digitized objects, quality assurance of the digital copies. It will be checked and will be ensured the digital accuracy and consistency of the data, and it will be presented on a shared big platform that provides elevated visibility and reaching a wider audience. Currently, we are in the process of developing of this platform, and information is shared, and the project is coordinated with all the big museum institutions. Exchange is organized. We have webinars, online cafes, informational events. So it's not just the big museums, also the small museums should contribute. So we really have an overview about the Austrian heritage. And a lot of projects are already going on in the Austrian museums, of course, and I would just give you an overview about what is currently happening on new digitization objects in the Austrian museums. So I will start with an exhibition and online exhibition of the Museum of Technology in Vienna. Women at Work is a digital exhibition format from these museums, and it both serves as a web exhibition and a research platform. Today almost forgotten, but revolutionary at the time, by setting up the so-called Women's Pavilion at the Vienna's World Fair of 1873, addressing the female world as a working space for the first time. When the Vienna's World Fair opened its gates on the 1st of May in 1873 as the 5th World Arts Fair and the first one in the German-speaking sphere, the city of Vienna became a stage for an impressive showcase of the world art and technology of that time for half a year. With its exhibition grounds accommodating as many as 200 individual buildings in Vienna's Prater area, this gigantic exhibition outperformed its predecessors in terms of both size and exhibits. The curatorial concept also caused a stir. The women's pavilion, the females' professions pursued by the lower social classes were showcased in this pavilion for the very first time, something that had previously been completely unknown to the majority of the modern middle-class visitors. This is how the Women's Pavilion encouraged the then still very young feminist movements of the time in their fight for equality in education and pay, and by supporting communication and networking within the female community, promoting the understanding of the labor conditions and needs of girls and women across all social classes. The hybrid anniversary exhibition displayed documents that can only be found in this form at the Museum of Technology, and examined the significance and implications of this first women's pavilion at the World Fair, presenting, of course, numerous historical objects, photos, plans in the exhibition, and provided insight about how women's daily work was represented in the pavilion, shone the light on activities and initiatives during the World Fair. In addition, a documentary was produced showing also economic and social continuities of female labor reflected on the relevance for these developments in the current transformation of our economic and working environment. This exhibition took place in the first half of this year and was accompanied by an extensive online exhibition with high-resolution digital copies of the original documents, and this online exhibition will remain permanently accessible. The multimedia web exhibition opens up a variety of perspectives and cross-connections to the user on the topic of the Vienna World Exhibition, education and women's work, and connects them to a constantly growing open access portal of the publication of the museum. This open access portal aims to enable open and free access to the results of the scientific work at the museum, shows the scientific publications, makes it available to a broad public, and the museum's e-publishing strategy includes the digitization of the print holdings of the whole collection of the museum, the Journal of History of Technology, and also Inside Out, the journal on gender and sexuality in STEM collections and culture. And the Vienna Technical Museum is still working on continuing this scientific series as e-publications. Another very interesting project that focuses on another point of the rapid development of technology and how museums are trying to keep up with code breakers. How can museums create the basis for a future understanding of the impacts of digital technologies on society in times of rapid digital transformation? Based on the example of two collection objects from the museum, an automated teller machine and a mobile device for cashless payment, I'm sure you all know those objects from daily life. And it analyzes how we can examine how these digital infrastructures are dealt with. Now we know what happens in everyday use, but will generation like 2 or 3 generations after us will still know how this works? If you're like on the same generation as me, we have CD players, we used to have digital storage objects like floppy disks, and the nowadays generation will not use this technology anymore. So it's really eminent to document also those user experiences, and this is part of an ongoing research project, and also at the same time develop technical strategies for the long-time archiving of now obsolete software. Turning the project team in the titular code breakers, the museum deciphers and cracks the complex multidimensional code between digital technologies that accompany us in everyday life and their impacts in our individual lives and society, and tries to make them accessible for a longer time, even when the technology is already outdated. Another project is from the Wien Museum on citizen science, under Geschichte mitschreiben. It's a crowdsourcing platform that motivates citizens to help to transcribe and digitize collections of historic handwritten letters or postcards, giving the audience a voice in the museum, and at the same time using their knowledge and their resources to expand the possibilities of the collection. And a project like this really are completely in line with ICOM's new museum definition that really adds those new aspects like the openness and accessibility of museums to those central tasks like exhibiting and collecting we are already used to. Also underlining the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection and knowledge sharing that come more and more important in our nowadays societies. And of course, just give you a little European perspective at the end of my contribution. I want to speak to you and show you some of the current projects there. Speaking of digitization, one cannot just think locally or nationally in this digital world, of course. We are all connected. As member countries of the European Union, we are striving for cooperation to facilitate the access to advanced technologies and remove barriers. So one project currently tackles the question how to store all those data. We are digitizing our collections, and it's the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. So far, only 30 to 15% of the cultural collections in Europe have been digitized. bigger objects or three-dimensional cultural landscapes, the data is even worse. Most standards in use are often not uniform, traceable or secure, putting Europe's tangible and intangible cultural treasures at risk. So the EU Commission has launched a dialogues with member states to create this storage solution as a cultural cloud. And it has a budget of more than 110 million and should be realized until 2025 as an Horizon Europe project to provide this infrastructure to save data, but also be independent from big commercial platforms like, for example, Google's or other that already provide cloud solutions. Another important aspect will be how to train museum professionals in using and organizing all those digital collections. That's the skills for EOSC project, skills for the European Open Source, Open Science Commons. So also funded by the Horizon Europe program. It has 44 partner institutions in 18 European countries. I hope Hungary is one of them. And they will set up a network of competence centers to speed up the training of museum professionals, of researchers, to manage this scientific data, and the Natural History Museum will be one of these partners and will develop a profile for museum curators for open digital collections. We talked a lot about copyright today already, and this was also the core of the Recreating Europe project that had its final conference in I think, May this year. It was talking about the strength and the weaknesses of the European copyright legislation. One major weakness, as we talked about AI a lot today, was there is no regulation on artificial intelligence yet. But technologies enable an unprecedented democratization of cultural practices for the production and the use of this intellectual property. An effective system of sustainable norms for digital copyright is needed, but is very challenging to create, as we know. And copyright law is very complex. Many countries have different laws, and there are also gaps in knowledge and awareness. So under the contribution of ICOM, we made some policy recommendations for the European Commission in special regard for the GLAM institutions, for the museum especially, so to reform the European copyright framework systematically and put the same regulations in the different countries in place, so we can work on the same basis and exchange data, to clarify and simplify the European copyright framework for cultural heritage, and really also install exceptions for museums, so museums can make their digitized collections publicly accessible, to expand and safeguard the public domain to do just that, and to boost the role of cultural heritage in the European Union, to safeguard the public value of cultural heritage, and to engage and educate also the GLAM stakeholders to ensure a fair balance of copyright interests, of course, but also the possibility to show contemporary artists, contemporary art in our museum, and to not make that financial issues, so that museum has to pay so much on copyright fees that they're not to be able to present the digitized objects from contemporary artists, because it's just too much money to pay. So thank you so much, and I wish you all some nice discussions and further lectures. Thank you so much.